How's it going?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I guess a disclaimer for the audience: you're battling a sore throat. You might abruptly stop in the middle of your sentence and cough. So
I'll try to keep it to the end of the sentence, but yeah, if I have to mute it, if there's a 5 seconds of silence, that might be a cough. But I'll try to keep it under control.
I'm sure the audience will forgive you for that. Well, the election's behind us, and you and I we were talking. We've talked quite a bit over the last few weeks, and one thing that you said was that Trump miscalculated in this whole 51st state thing, and somebody told him to tone it down until after the election. And we just had Carney went down and met with Trump. Um, why don't you give us your sort of unfiltered thoughts of what's transpired and what you think is going to happen now that the Canadian election is over?
Well, I don't know if Trump necessarily misspoke. Maybe he went a little bit too hard with it at first, but I'm pretty sure he wanted Carney in. Like I think he wanted um, him in because I think that's an easier person to combat. I've had a pretty strong view that the 51st state was never going to be all of Canada. It was the Alberta or the West or something like that. And Carney being in will certainly help him if he has to run any kind of a campaign, Alberta separation campaign. I think it will help him having Carney in. Um, so yeah, I don't know if it was. I think it was a plan. I don't think he does things this big without a plan behind it.
Okay, that's
But
fair.
but I don't know the meeting with between Trump and Carney. I thought it went pretty well. I thought it could have been more aggressive or passive aggressive. Beyond Carney making or Trump making the comment about Freeland being a problem or someone he doesn't like very much, which is kind of a shot at Carney in a way because Carney is the godfather to one of Freeland's kids. And Carney just had to kind of sit there and take that. But Carney had his thing where he said that Canada will never be the 51st state. I've spoken to the people. He has to say that. That's fine. I get that side, and Trump just saying never say never. But beyond that, I thought it was a pretty just an honest back and forth because Carney he said we're your biggest customer, we're biggest trading partner. We have these integrated systems, whether it's um, steel because we get products to make the steel from the U.S. And then make the steel and then sell it back to them, or the car parts that come from the U.S. manufacture the car, sell it back to the U.S. So Carney was trying to make that point, and then Trump just says, "Well, here's the problem: we want to make these ourselves. Like, not we're not trying to do anything against you guys. Just strictly, this is for us. We want to make steel. We want to make aluminum. We want to make our cars." And Carney really had no rebuttal at that point. Like I think Carney spoke. The whole thing was about a half an hour, maybe just a little bit longer. Carney spoke for about 4 minutes, and Trump had the rest. Because I don't really know what Carney says. He knows that's reality. Like it's the U.S. decides we're making these ourselves. I don't know who Canada's going to sell their stuff to. I don't. Maybe they could ship it off to Asia or Europe, but that's tough to do. It's tough to do with cars. It's tough to do with steel and aluminum. That stuff's heavy. They usually try to sell those closest to where your buyers are. So I don't think they're going to be able to do it, and definitely not in the volume, not the volume that the U.S. buys from Canada. So it was a hard reality for Carney, and you could see it didn't go very well because you'll have the Toronto Star. You had was it Dean Blundell, that guy who has that podcast out in Ontario. They had to go so hard for Carney, saying Carney destroyed him. Look what Carney did, and it was unbelievable reading this. Like it was top level cope because it didn't go that way. Like it wasn't a destroying on either side. I don't think it was just an honest conversation. But I think they know that they're in trouble. But the Canada's in a tough position if the U.S. actually goes through and is successful in doing this. And it looks like they're going to be. They got a really good trade deal with the UK. They just signed. The UK had to drop their tariffs from about 5.4 to 1%, and the US took theirs from I think it was like 2 to 10%. So the US got the better deal in that they got their tariff money, and they got the markets opened up for more products from the US to go to the UK. So the UK essentially made a deal at a disadvantage to themselves. So who knows? I don't know. After watching that, maybe Carney is going to have to make a bad deal too. But uh, we'll see. Like I was very surprised by that trade deal this morning. I thought that would go longer. I didn't think the UK would be first. I thought you'd see something. You'd see maybe Japan or maybe like Vietnam, but the UK being the first trade deal, and it's a win for Trump. Like they definitely got the better deal. So I don't know. I don't know what Carney's going to do. I don't know if they're going to face reality and make a deal like that, or they're going to try to fight him. They're going to be the battle against Trump.
Sacrificial node.
Yeah. Which is, I wrote an article today talking about the whole campaign. It was both Carney and Pierre, but I think Carney did a better job kind of using it. The Canadian nationalism, the elbows up. We're not American. We're never going to be the 51st state. They kind of rode that through. Now, I don't know if that necessarily won them the election. I think the fact that the NDP cratered probably on purpose, like Jagmeet Singh. I know NDP voters, and they were livid with Jagmeet Singh. So I think they just either checked out. Some went to the Liberals, but I think mostly the Liberals, the NDP vote going to the Liberals probably gave them the win. But I guess we're gonna have to see because now they're gonna have King Charles read the throne speech. So they're pushing this. Whether it's, I don't know, they're gonna try to take some real Canadian nationalism approach to it, or this is some kind of faux nationalist propaganda. Because I think the reality for Canada is we're in for a hard time. Like our institutions are kind of falling apart. We're gonna definitely have economic problems. That's even if we have a bad trade deal with the U.S. I still think it's going to be a pretty big downturn, especially for Eastern Canada. And they're going to have to do policies that probably people would not have accepted unless there's a bad guy, like a real big bad guy. And we're fighting for our nation, and we're using that idea, which is kind of why I think Charles is coming in to kind of give people this, probably mostly the boomers, like a little bit of nostalgic feeling that, okay, the king's here and he's here with us, and he's gonna help us through this against the big bad Americans. And also, I think there's a reality that they're facing at both Alberta and Quebec separatist movements, and real ones. Especially the fact that I believe that the U.S. is looking more towards the West. So I think it's a real separatist movement. I think it's going to get a lot of support, probably U.S. support in it. So I think they're going to have to use. I think it's propaganda. It's not them turning a page and wanting to go back to the nation of Canada in any way at all.
So I don't even know where to begin. This King Charles thing, is this just a mistake? I just don't. I feel like it's, unless they want to completely get rid of the Charter of Rights and turn us into a dictatorship. Where is this going?
I think it's just propaganda. It just feels. It's all for the feels. It's you have a lot of it's obvious that the nation's in a bad state, and it's not unusual to use kind of nostalgic propaganda or feelings and this kind of stuff to like build people up or get them to accept new things, whether it's a war or whether it's just policies or anything like that. So I think it's strictly just meant for propaganda. I don't think they're going to change anything. They're not going to go to like closer to a monarch system. I don't think that's happening at all. I think this is just for a campaign.
Is it going to work though? Like I just
yeah,
expect it better.
Well, it's funny because I have friends, I have clients that are in the elbows up kind of side of it. And they honestly want to be a nation. It's not like they're not fooling themselves. Like it's genuine, but they're just they're putting their faith in people who probably they shouldn't put their faith into. And then there's people I've seen who I call them kind of the red ensign nationalists, who are very aware. They know the history of Canada. They're also buying it, and they're also liking it. So I'm surprised how well it's worked on them. So I don't know. I think it might work.
Well, I was
At
wrong.
least as a distraction. At least as a distraction. I'm not saying who knows what they do with it, but I think it will. And
Maybe you're right. It just strikes me as like a very desperate move.
they are. I think they are in a desperate move. Absolutely. The situation is bad. It was already bad. Now you have them coming in with probably, the U.S. is our biggest trading partner by 76% of our exports. It's massive. If that even goes down 30%, it's going to be a major problem. And there's a chance it goes way further than that. If the U.S. is serious and they want to do it and they actually want to produce their own stuff, then yeah, it's going to be a huge hit to Canada. And we're already in a bad economic state. Like, it's not like it's, if we were strong and that was happening, maybe you could come through it. But yeah, I think they are desperate. I would be. If I was in that situation, I would be desperate.
Yeah, well, they pulled through this election, so who knows? Maybe they'll eke through the next few years.
I don't know. It just looked, the fact that Polyev, they're pulling him back in. I don't know. He was supposed to. It was funny after he lost. There's so many excuses. Some could be real. Who knows what it was? But you'd hear that Carney and the Liberals are just scared to have Pierre in there. They're just scared because he's going to own them. He's going to destroy Carney and all this standard stuff. But then Carney says, "Well, I'll call a by-election immediately. If you can get someone and run in a seat, I'll do it immediately. No games." So he's bringing him in. He's bringing him in like they're just on the same team. Like he took one for the team. Okay, it's not going to be your turn this time. We need this guy in. But we'll keep you in. You'll still have your job. You'll still be leader of the opposition. And that looks like what's happening. Because it was very odd. It was odd for Pierre to they just basically went along with Carney's narrative. The platforms were very, very similar, not a lot different. He avoided all the U.S. podcasts. He attacked Trump in the same way. Like it was the exact same narrative with as far as the U.S. went. So yeah, I think it looks like they're setting up for that battle against the U.S. to be a problem for what the U.S. is trying to do. But he'll be back in. I think he'll be back in really shortly. Like he's campaigning already in that Southern Alberta riding. I was watching some videos of him going around speaking to voters, and just so quick. The guy to go from Carney being and the Liberals being the end of Canada, it's over if it happens, to Pierre losing his seat, being invited back in from the person who was attacking him, his nemesis, to business as usual. It just kind of shows you the illusion. My opinion is the illusion of the two parties, that they're generally pushing the same direction and they don't want anyone besides their group kind of in power, and they'll do anything to keep things kind of status quo.
There was a PPC candidate. We did a post-mortem Zoom call, and something he said was I found really interesting. He said there was this election was an election of fear. So you had fear of Donald Trump, fear of climate change, and fear of Carney. I kind of agree with the third one. And then he goes, this fear, it destroyed all third parties. So now we have a two-party system. And if this continues, we're going to go to a one-party system. And I mean, I think what we're discussing is maybe we're already in a one-party system.
My opinion is it's a one-party system. But you do need that. You need to have, the people need to believe there's two, because as soon as they don't believe there's two, that's when people start really organizing against the one. So you really have to keep that illusion. And I have very smart conservative friends who we go back and forth on it. But they still truly believe that that's not possible. They truly believe the other side is just the evil bad guy, and our guy is not. Our team is not. And I get it. It's a really hard thing to come to grips with. Like, if the idea of it just being technically one, now they both want the jobs. I do think there's competition in there. Like, I want the job to be this because there's glory in it. There's glory being the prime minister. So there's competition in that. But when it comes down to like key objectives, they have to go in the same parallel. And every time I see whether it's a policy or a position, they're both totally in agreement. I know that's the plan. You just have to look at those things, ignore the other stuff. The other stuff is usually just, we're going to give more things to our friends or our donors. But the things they agree on are that's actual policy. The plan to go forward.
No, I get that. One other thing, I wanted your opinion on this. I'm looking at three different vectors of attack on Carney. On one end, you have well, obviously you have Donald Trump. So Donald Trump is going to push from the south. From the west, you have Danielle Smith. Now, whether she genuinely wants to separate or she's just using this as leverage, she's going to attack from her flank. And then Pierre Poilievre, he's going to attack from his flank. Do you think that the Carney can stand up to those three attacks, or do you even see it that way?
I think Carney and Pierre are the same. I think those will be narrative attacks, like just to keep the story going. I don't think they're gonna be real attacks. Smith, I never know where she sits. Like she's playing it how I would play it. Like even if she was a separatist, you can't say it at this point. You can't be direct. It would backfire. You have to put in the systems that allow you to move forward. They need to pull pretty much all federal control back. So whether it's taxation, policing, the pension, you have to start pulling that back under the provincial control. And she's doing all the things you have to do to leave while saying she doesn't want to leave. So I look at the actions, not really what they say, because she has to. If she came out and said that she's for Canada or Alberta being independent, I think the attacks would be very, very difficult to defend right now. She needs help with that. She needs support from the U.S. countering the propaganda on social media, within the news, within all the means that they can. So I'm still unsure about her. I think that she wants to leave, and I think she believes that that's probably the best tactic, but she just can't say it. So I think the attack from Smith is the same attack from Trump. I think it's the same movement. I don't think it happens. Alberta doesn't do it all by itself. It's not possible. It only would happen if it has support from the U.S. So it's, in my opinion, that would be an attack, and I think that's happening. It's in the process. And Pierre is not really an attack against Carney, but they'll make it seem that way. They got to keep people believing in that, so they'll do their things. But I haven't seen Poilievre really change anything. Even when you see all the people who are big supporters of him, I'm not seeing big change. He's always just behind. Like he's like, okay, now enough people are talking about this in the U.S. I have to say it. I have no choice. Like I'm getting hammered. He's more containment, I think, than he is like leading an attack. He's containing the right opinion, not supporting it or driving it. Like Trump in the U.S. and all the kind of people around him have been the only ones that are changing narrative. They've changed climate change narrative. They changed identity narrative. They're changing border narrative, media narrative. It's all driven by them. Nothing has been driven by Pierre or the Conservatives. Not one thing.
No, I'll give you that. You're right there. What do you think is happening? Do you think it's Pierre actually wants this? To me, it strikes me the way he's aged the last 2 years. I think the conservative board gave him an ultimatum. Like, this is what's going to happen. You either toe the party line or we'll just find someone else that will.
I don't know. I just look at Pierre. Like I try to assess like who the person is. So this is a political animal who's been in politics his whole life. He's lived in Ottawa since he was 25 years old. So he's basically formed in a place that is very, very liberal. So friends, family, his kids are growing up in this system. He's an adopted kid who's, his adoptive parents, his dad left him when he was 12 because he was gay, and now he's married to a man. His kids wear all the LGBT propaganda clothing. Like I think that's who he is. I think he's more liberal. I think he's actually on that side. And I think the conservative stuff he really has to hold back on. And I go back to that. So he was supposed to have his big kind of nationalist rally. This is before the election was called, and he attacks Trudeau's kind of post nationalist ideology, and he does it in his like low tone, like his ASMR voice that he does when he's trying to be serious, and then you can tell that he's almost struggling to like fight it. But then later in his speech, he's talking about how everyone is Canadian, bloodlines don't matter, and it's Polyev or Patel, Martin or Muhammad. He's excited about that. Like he's totally excited. He loves that idea. So I think that's just his ideology. I think he really is kind of a neoliberal completely. And he's just in the position of conservative. He's just on that side. Whether I'm not saying he's an actor, I just think conservatives in Ottawa are that. He just is him. So I don't know if he's being held back by the conservative party itself. There's definitely gonna be some of that, but I don't know how much he disagrees with it. He goes along with pretty much everything, and he's reluctant to speak against it. But we'd have to go back a long ways to see him do anything, or you're kind of like, okay, yeah, that's probably more conservative, but people change, and he could change from being conservative to non-conservative just as easily. He can go the other way. It just depends on what your surrounding is, what your lifestyle is. It'll have an effect on you.
I was listening to this guy, I forget his name, Bob or something, the guy with the guitar. And I guess he's from Alberta. He said that the tariffs, the way Trump is using them, he's trying to drive a wedge between the Laurentian elites. So I think he's attacking the auto manufacturing industry, which comes from Ontario, steel and or aluminum, which comes from Ontario, but he's leaving oil and gas off the table. You seem to think pretty highly of the Trump administration. You think he's doing this intentionally?
Well, I think it's twofold. I think it does help him drive a wedge. That's if he wants to drive a wedge to get something from the other side, and I think he does. But he also does want to make this stuff. Like a nation has to make these things. There are certain things that nations need to have complete control over. Steel and aluminum they're up there. Auto manufacturing, I think he needs auto manufacturing back. Like that was a huge hit to that country. There's a lot of voters on his side that don't have jobs because these cars are made in Mexico or in Canada, and there is actually no need for it whatsoever. They should completely be made in the United States. If you cared about like your nation and not some global project, you would do that. That would be a important thing for you to do. So I think the auto manufacturing is more. He wants to bring these jobs back. But it helps too. The wedge is important. Like if he does want to get access, and I think he wants Alberta because a part of their economic plan is they need cheap and reliable energy because it's going to be inflationary. Some of the stuff they're doing is it's when you start moving manufacturing back from a low cost to a higher cost place, things are going to be more expensive. And I think fracking is difficult in the U.S. It's becoming more difficult and more costly. So I think they need reliable, cheaper energy, which Alberta has ready. It's going. It's operational. They don't have to deal with other shipping it across oceans. They can just pipeline it down, and as the pipelines are already set up. So, and if he thinks that the East is going to be a hindrance to this plan, and I think they could be, then yeah, I could see him supporting a Western or Alberta independence or statehood.
My understanding of oil and gas is extremely limited. Like, is Ottawa right now limiting the amount of oil and gas that Alberta can ship down to the U.S.?
No, not limiting it. No, but they could. They've threatened that in that whole early stages of the 51st state. They were threatening that. But they're doing things. They're doing things as far as like regulation wise that make it very difficult. They make it more costly to kind of extract the oil, or really oil or gas. So they can do that. They can do it on regulations, which is what they've been doing. Alberta's been, they put a couple of bills through there essentially saying we're ignoring these things. They weren't even going to let federal employees onto sites to check to see if they're complying with the regulations. So that's kind of how I think at first Ottawa would do it.
I'm trying to understand when we say Trump wants Alberta's oil, but they can just buy it from them right now, can't they?
Yes, they could, but it also could be made more expensive. It could be it could be held back a bit. Like it's by making it more expensive, they're going to produce less. They could also do things like we had a previous talk where they play at the currencies. I think if the U.S. does do a split currency, where it's an internal and external, having it be under their currency would be needed, because otherwise you can kind of manipulate that a little bit with currencies. But it's not just oil and gas. So both Alberta and Saskatchewan also have a lot of uranium. Some of the biggest deposits of uranium in North America. And if they start going nuclear, which I think they will, they're going to need that for their, like all their data centers, AI. They're already in the process of doing that. So it's not just oil and gas. There's uranium. There's a lot of other materials in this area that I think they want access to without dealing with any kind of any games from another group of people, especially if that group of people are hostile to them. But I think that's what they're determining, how hostile they're going to be. So they have to plan. I think they have to look at two routes, right? They have to build up their options if it goes one way, but also still try to maintain the status quo as long as it is status quo.
But basically, they don't want the green lobby interfering and driving up costs.
More. They already are, but more. They could go higher.
How come we're not hearing, or maybe I'm not listening, but from the Trump administration, like, why aren't they going nuclear? Wouldn't that make more sense?
I think that there's a lot of people are scared with it. There's a lot of movement from, for whatever reason, from the one side to limit nuclear. I think just because it's the cheapest form of energy, and they don't want to. That would help with a lot of production. If you could have, the cheaper the energy gets, the more productive you can be. But I think they are. Yeah. What happened? So Microsoft, I think it was Microsoft, they bought. There was this nuclear site in California that was being shut down. Microsoft bought that for one of their data centers. So I think it's in the process. That just takes a little more time. But I think that's in the works. I've been invested in uranium for a long time, and it just keeps working. So I think so. I think the future will be something like that.
It just seems like if you want to be self-sufficient, like if you're going the route of tariffs, and you're trying to onshore everything, provided you can get access to uranium, it seems a lot easier than oil.
But oil does more things than just power. So yes.
The moment I said it, I realized.
So yes, I could see it. Like power isn't necessary. Yeah, there's not a lot of. There's some natural gas. Like Alberta's bringing some natural gas power generation, but oil is like gasoline. It's diesel. It's plastics. There's a lot of things in oil. Like a nation, you can't. You couldn't go to war. You couldn't build without oil, because it's in so pretty much everything. So it's not just like power. I think the U.S. will go to power being. Maybe it's nuclear, maybe it's thorium, maybe it's something like that. But I see power moving different direction. But oil and gas isn't used for a lot of power.
Well, why don't we talk about sort of related on oil, Alberta and Quebec. Alberta wants to separate because they want to drill more oil. Quebec wants to separate besides the fact of their culture. They want to go more green. At this point, does anybody care if Quebec leaves? Like, it's just less equalization payments.
Well, in the Alberta separatist groups, you cheer on Quebec's separation. I'll say that they're all for them. They love they love Planchette. They're like, yeah, do win more seats. You're doing excellent. So yes, that would solve some problem. The problem isn't Alberta doesn't want to separate because of oil. They want to separate because we have absolutely no say politically in the federal government. Zero. The whole West has zero say. And it's not like BC is happy either. It's just Vancouver area doesn't understand this. But like most of BC votes conservative federally, and they understand that they don't have a lot of say federally because once you get past Toronto, the elections are almost called, right? Like it's Pierre or Carney. They don't really have to appease the people in the West because there's no voting power there. The Senate is ridiculous. The Parliament's ridiculous. That's the reason. Like when my grandpa was talking to me about Alberta separating when I was 7, the things he said at that time have been true my whole life. It hasn't changed. There is just no power. There's no you can't you don't really have a say. It took extreme situations for the Reform Party to come in, but even that was co-opted. Once it came in, joined the alliance, that fell apart. But it's very difficult for the West to have any kind of say federally. It makes no sense for the federal government to not own to. It makes no sense for them to appease the West because politically they can't really be voted out or voted in based on that. You have to get Toronto, Montreal, kind of that area.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, the threat of Quebec separating is that the monopoly that Ontario and Quebec holds would go?
That would help. Yeah. So if Quebec was gone and all those seats were gone, both Senate and Supreme Court and in the Parliament, yeah, that would change the balance of power dramatically. It would be helpful. It would probably keep the West in, I would think, because that is the biggest problem. Yeah.
Seriously, it's APP Alberta. What is it?
Prosperity Project.
Prosperity Project. They should just switch their tactics to support and just give their funds to the Quebec separatists.
But I don't know. I'm not too close in following what they do there, but it's the reason equalization. All these things go to Quebec. It's just like a buy-in to stay in. Like it's bribes to stay in. So I don't know. I don't know if Quebec could separate. They seem confident. I've read their, they have lots of papers on it from the people who are pushing for it. They think they can economically separate. I don't know. Maybe they could, but yes, it would help if they do it. But I don't think that's going to happen.
They're just getting too much equalization payments. Why would they leave?
Right. That's the bribe. That's why. That's what stops it. If those were to stop now, if somehow those were to stop, yeah, I think you might see it. Because what's the reason at that point if they really don't want to be a part of it? Like that. Just I think it was the last week of the election when Blanchette was speaking. He's like, Canada is not my nation. It's not my nation. I'm here. I'm in Parliament. I don't feel at home in this Parliament, just like Daniel Smith wouldn't feel at home in the Quebec Parliament. He's like, this is not my nation. This is just temporary that we're here. And they believe that. A lot of them do, I think. And fair enough. I understand why they believe that. Language is important. It was a very hard project to make a country with 2 languages. It's very difficult because language is so important to communication, to belief, to culture, that it was so hard to do to make a nation with two different languages. So I get the people of Quebec who want to be their own nation. I don't think they're doing it in any kind of malicious way. I think they just believe that. But it's really difficult to be, unless they can find some other form to generate some other revenue. I don't know what they would have there. I've heard them say there's oil there, but I don't know. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't, but I think they'd be in a hard situation separating. But we'll see. I think we're in a time for big change. I think this is kind of when everything's shifting around. So if there's going to be big changes, I think it's the next 5-10 years where something like that can happen. Nonstop wars. Nonstop wars. I think these wars are going to continue. You got India and Pakistan fighting now, and no one seems to care. Two nuclear powers fighting, and even the people I follow, like I follow a lot of war people, war coverage people, and they try to be partisan, but you can always tell what side they're cheering for, like just by how they report an event. Even those people, they don't care. There's no part. There's like, I don't know, this happened here, this happened there. No one seems. It's very interesting to watch. And even Trump, when it first kicked off, and they asked him, he's like, "Oh yeah, I heard. Yeah, that's not great. We've been fighting for a long time, but we'll see." Like, not stop it. But just, I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens.
Well, there's so many conflicts going off all over the place. People are getting fatigued. We've been through a lot of elections too.
Hmm.
Like we had one in 21. We just had one here. You had the U.S. election. There's the midterm elections coming up.
And the
And
UK had their like local elections, and Reform UK crushed conservatives and liberals. So like that's like you can call them the populist party. I don't know what. I think they've at this point been kind of co-opted. I think their job is going to be to replace the Conservative Party. We'll see, but they did very well. Keir Starmer came out and was asked about it, and he just wouldn't even talk about it because it's very surprising for a party like a federal party to have so much of the seats and then have to have the local elections happen and they're third. Like it's very unusual, right? People are still, we just voted for these guys. We'll vote for them locally, right? That's kind of what the pattern is. But no, it wasn't them, and it wasn't the Conservatives. It was the Reform Party that got the most of the vote.
I
So
didn't know
big
that.
change there.
I didn't know in the UK they had the local elections, or even that there's parties at the local level.
Yeah, yeah,
Off the
the
top.
same. Yeah, same parties at the federal. And I think it was Monday or Tuesday. It happened.
Um, I was talking to this guy who was part of the BC Conservative Party EDA, and he was telling me his experience when he saw John Rostad come in, and he goes, it was basically a hostile takeover by the BC Liberals. We called them the BC United. So
Yeah,
it's like every time you make one step forward, they come and slap you right back.
BC. I don't know. Like I've told you, I have half my family in BC, and so I pay attention to BC provincial politics more than like so Alberta first, BC second. The rest I kind of somewhat pay attention to. But I remember looking at that. It was the election just before they changed from Liberal to the United BC, whatever that brand was, and I was looking at their platform. I'm like, these are identical. These are literally identical. I took it out and I stripped everything and I showed my wife. I'm like, here's platforms. Which one's which? Which party is which? She's like, I don't know. I have no idea. But yeah, it seemed like something was going on there when they flipped over. But that John seemed honest at first. He seemed like he was really doing things for the right reason. But I guess not. Is that what your contact said?
Yeah, but remember, with the contact I spoke to, he's kind of like me. He's more populist. But if you go in there with the mindset of like establishment conservative, or heaven forbid a liberal, it might look like they're doing the right thing. So you got to take that into
Hmm.
consideration.
Yeah, I don't know. He's a tough one to figure. I go back and forth on him being genuine and trying to deal with like it's a very messed up system in BC. Like all to say, it's like half and half. So well, just a little more than half is in a very small area, and then the rest, most of the province, is the other half. So it's a really weird split. It could really do with changing from the first past post system. I think that would help BC because it is just like two groups of people. The Vancouver area, Victoria, Vancouver area, and then the rest. So it's kind of tough. I guess John he would have had to, and then any attempt to get any votes from the other side just to get past 50%, because it was very close, whether it was on the level or not, it still probably would have been pretty close. It has to be that close to be able to pull any kind of shenanigans if they did. But yeah, that's the problem with that system is it makes the politician, even if they're legitimate and they really believe in a certain movement, they still have to get votes from that area. And that's the same thing with Pierre, right? Like, even if he was legitimate and he was believing in this, he still has to get votes from his area. So he can't be that way. He can't be, he can't say everything he thinks if that was the case. So I don't know. That would have been tough.
Yeah, reforming this first past the post system is not easy because the people it's designed to keep in power those that support it. One guy, is there any way we could do this judicially, like bring a court case where if you lose, you ask that your votes be transferred over to the person of your choosing?
You know what? I don't know. That'd be a good question. But Justin Trudeau, his first election, that was in his platform to change that system. Never did it, but that was probably the only good thing that was in his platform. I remember, but they were going to do it. I guess that was a big lie. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know too much about that to see if you could challenge it that way, but that would be an interesting thing to find out. But it's a problem. It's absolutely a problem. The reason the change that happen in like Europe or Scandinavia or UK is because, well, UK is not the case. UK doesn't have that, but Europe does. And it's funny, I have a friend who lives in Sweden, and I used to kind of make fun of the system because like every election I'd look at it, and there was like 9 parties, and they're all kind of in, and then they got to like jockey to form a government. So it's like a bunch of deals that happen. And there was one year where it took like a year and a half for Sweden to form a government because these parties couldn't agree on who was going to form government. But in a way, it's a better system. It does give more groups a say in government, right? Like it doesn't just make a system where you're going to have 2, maybe 3 parties get in. But I don't know. I know why they don't want to change it. Like it makes a ton of sense because I think that would be a major problem for the main parties.
Yeah, if you have the power, you don't want to give it up. What do you think is going to happen with BC? Because everyone's saying the West is going to separate. I'm like, I don't see BC going in that direction. It's going more communist with this EB government.
Oh, I think it would happen to be the very last thing to move, and I think things would have to get, pretty bad there. But it's possible to split. It is possible to split a province. The U.S. is in the process of. So Idaho is attempting to take part of Oregon, and I think it's going to happen. Just because that group of people they don't vote the way most of Oregon votes, because Portland kind of manages the whole state. So they're like, we don't want to be under this control. So they're attempting it, and I think they're going to succeed. So who knows? That's a harder scenario, like to basically split off a chunk of BC to add to Alberta or whatever the situation is. That's a harder one. Yeah, I think really bad things have to happen to BC for any real change to happen. But that's possible. I think we're going down a road where the circumstances will be there for very, very drastic change.
I was on a podcast and I said to the interviewer, BC is not a province; it's 2 cities. Well, the Lower Mainland, Victoria, and you got this housing Ponzi scheme, and it's governing everything else that's happening in the province. So you don't even need to separate. Like you just need to draw these 2 nipples around these two areas and just make those their own province.
Yeah. I don't. 5 years ago, I would have said no way. And when I was thinking about how the West would separate this kind of stuff, I thought, no way. There's no way we could pull BC out. But then from COVID on, I have a great respect for propaganda. They can make people do anything. I just know it. I saw them do dramatic things, change and ignore. So change and ignore. So ignoring laws, ignoring anything that was any institutions, take over institutions, whatever. I saw that they're capable of doing it. They did it globally. It's not. I don't think it'd be too difficult for the United States to run. So we got 5 million people, BC, 5.5, go 5 in Alberta. That's a really small campaign. I think they could do it if that's what they want. This is the question: is it worth it to them to do it? And Trump and some of his people, they really talk about manifest destiny. It was a plan for the U.S. to go up that route and connect to Alaska. That was very, very old idea in the U.S. and they're talking about this old idea. So I don't think it's far fetched that they could pull it off.
But why would they want to? You're adding another California or Washington.
It's not though. It's not when you look at it like Alberta, Saskatchewan, and most of BC. It's not. It's just so BC is only votes that way because that small little section. But if you take it as a whole, like as all the whole space, those Vancouver and Victoria votes will be diminished. And I think they're going to lose that regardless. Like we saw that Aaron Gunn won in Victoria or somewhere on the island. That Aaron Gunn's a interesting conservative guy. Like I was pretty shocked by that. So I think reality will force change, and they don't even need the. If something happened where it was the whole West, I think that group gets kind of washed out because I think the state would be a combination because just the population size, I think they would do something like that. So I don't think it would be like adding in California. Even California is switching. So reality hits. So once reality hits, things change. Things don't stay one way. And the trend right now is going away from the current regime's ideology, their plans, their policies, because they lost their ideas, broke things. A lot of people who are in certain powers who aren't really either side or have realized that. That's why Trump got all the backing. His ideas got backing from people that were never on his side, never on this idea, and they're all doing it for their own reasons. But I think the trend is going the other way. All Vancouver needs is that housing bubble to go pop, and if the U.S. plays a game where they're going to absolutely remove any Chinese influence, so that they'll make it so that'll pop the Vancouver housing bubble. They'll pull their money out real quick. They'll have to like sell quick. They'll have to get out. It'll be a problem.
Well, either that or even if let's say Alberta announces they're going to separate, the millions of people that will sell their property in former Canada to move to Alberta would crash every property market.
Yeah, maybe it's already fragile. Like it could be anything. I'm blown away that they've managed to like keep this thing floating, but everyone's incentivized to do it, keep it going, right? They need the people who own these properties, whether they're Gen X, Boomer, some millennial, they have that's in some cases their retirement plan. Like it's needed. The cities need these prices up because that's how they get paid, and they're already in trouble. They're already in financial. Every major city in Canada is in financial trouble. They're barely hanging on, and all they can do is raise property taxes. So if they did have any kind of a housing crash, that's not only the people, but it's probably the cities that are in trouble. And it's going to be like a RoboCop situation.
What was it? Was it New Detroit City? What was the city in RoboCop?
I can't remember the city, but what was the corporation that took it over by giving them all these loans? Yeah, knowing that they couldn't pay them back. There's that clip where that mayor
that
goes
RoboCop in too, the black mayor.
He go. That's real. Like there's people that have let these cities like charge a credit card. Now they're like, now you got to pay. So it's I don't know. There's going to be some cities that are going to be in trouble. That happened in the U.S. In the GFC, there were cities that went bankrupt. Lots pensions that blew out. That's going to happen. Some of these pensions are going to be gone. These people who think they have these pensions, it's fugazi at this point. It's there, but I don't know if it's really there. It can be pulled away real quick.
Are you talking about CPP or are you talking about city pensions?
Probably all of them, because they're all kind of invested into the same stuff, right? So all of them. Most of them aren't. They haven't beat inflation. They weren't already. They need to get like 8%. This is like pre-COVID. They're not hitting 8%, and inflation has not been 8%. They probably needed to be like 10 to 11. So all these are underfunded, and they're all funded into things that aren't really there. So if there's any kind of market correction, I think they're going to be in trouble. And there has to be. This thing is not real at this point.
I did when Marty was still coming on my show, I did an episode with him on the CPP, and the CPP, the way it works is the existing employees pay a portion of their salary to pay out the previous employees. But how do other pensions work? Like, are they investing him on the stock market and hoping it grows and then using that to pay him out?
Yeah. So I'll give you an example. My wife used to work for AHS, so the Alberta Health system, like BC Interior, like that health system. So hers was with her union, and that's what they did. They took some off the paycheck and they put that money in and they invested it. And we can still go look at her pension. We can still look at what they're investing and what the return has been. But yeah, it's managed by a separate group to manage those. In some of the pensions, it's managed by so in Alberta, there's some that are managed by AMCO. So AMCO is the Alberta Investment Corporation. So there's a mix of them. There's some that are the state kind of investment arm. Some are their own. I don't know what all BCs are through, but it's probably something similar where the union has a separate one, or it's going through BC's investment vehicle. But they invest in lots of stuff. You can see the breakdown. I look at my wife, so it's a breakdown. There's the standard stuff, stock, bonds. They went a lot into private investment. So this was new companies they're investing in, so not necessarily any kind of companies on the stock exchange. And I was watching those numbers go up because they had to get returns, so they had to take bigger risks on what they're investing in, because that a new company startup is going to be a bigger risk than established company that's been on the stock exchange. So watching the balance change to be more in that category was risky, but they all had to do it because they all had to get to, like I say, 7-8% a year.
Right. So you work for a company or the government, I guess AHS,
Yep.
and they say, give us this percentage of your salary every month, and then we'll give you, we promise you a return of this. We'll invest it wisely. What
Mm-hmm.
happens if they don't invest it wisely? Like, or if the market collapses, who do you sue? Is the government just going to switch to UBI?
I don't know who you sue. That might be interesting to go through, because there were a lot of public pensions in the U.S. that did blow up. Kind of see what happened, like exactly who. I think they just lost their money. They couldn't sue anybody, I don't believe. But you can just lose it. And even when you look at my wife's pension, it relies on people coming in and being replaced to kind of feed it. Like even if you retire and you have a certain amount there, it still needs more people coming in to feed it. It's not just going off of the money that they have. And they're hiring less people, so I don't think these pensions are going to be around by the time like my wife would need it. And even CPP, my wife's parents, their CPP payments have been dropping quite a bit. Like they're not getting what they used to get, and it's not keeping up with any kind of inflation. Like they're not even getting the same amount that they were getting, regardless of inflation.
Okay, let me stop you there. How does that work? That's what I'm trying to say. Like, you come in, you have a contract for CPP.
Yeah.
I understand you don't sign something when you're born or you go into the workforce, but they say we're going to pay you $1,000 a month when you retire.
Mm-hmm.
How can they just renegotiate and change that? I mean, if it was a private company, I couldn't do that.
Well, it's not a set amount. Like my wife doesn't even know what she get paid out right now. It depends on it. That gets calculated kind of when you retire. Now CPP I think is different than my wife's pension, but they can play games. They can play games of what the inflation rate actually is, because it's all supposed to be adjusted to that. But if they say it's 4%, but it's actually 8%, you're losing on it. But I don't know how it went down. It wasn't a lot. Like it went down like $75 a month. But yeah, it's gone down for them. Legally, I don't know what that thing is like. What are you going to do against this government machine, I don't think you really have a lot of say in it. And the CPP is kind of just like a forced retirement plan. It's a promise that you'll get it back. But that promise worked when there's a whole bunch of people paying into it, not the system now or the demographics. There's a lot less young people paying into it and a lot of older people needing it. They've had to adjust to it because in my opinion, it was never going to work. It was just a hope that the system would be a good system. Sorry, I got to mute 1 sec. Okay, back. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean the CPP, I think it could have worked if every generation has as many children as the World War II generation,
Right.
but
Yeah.
but not when you have like 1.6 children per family.
Right. And hey, there's reasons why that they you could say there's reasons why they wanted to bring in all these people, right? They're trying to, you could say they're trying to solve that problem. But their plans haven't really worked out. The people they brought in, they're supposed to be, there was a study that I read, their rationale for it, but it was 8 years. They were supposed to be a net benefit, not a net taker from the system. And then after that, they're going to contribute at a greater rate. And then the kids would contribute at a greater rate. But they weren't coming out. Like it was past 10 years and a lot of the people that came in and they were still takers from the system, not givers into the system. And then obviously with the last 3 years, they just thrown it out.
Well, why are they net takers even after 10 years? Is it because they're earning their money somewhere else and paying their tax there?
Well, I don't know what it would be. Like they're getting a lot of money from the government. So they still get paid. They're still on, whether it's housing assistance, financial aid. There's lots of stuff they're getting. You'd be very, very surprised how much they're paid to be here. You'd be very angered, especially now. It's even gone up.
They've created this perfect system where there is so much bureaucracy on top of bureaucracy. Take education or even healthcare. Like it's impossible to track like how much money is coming from where, going to where with all these grants. So the citizens, they're almost even if they're looking, they don't know where to look to get to that point where you're angry.
Yeah, there's a few that dig into this, like the Fraser Institute, kind of that more libertarian kind of think tank. They do really good reports. They dig into it. So if you go there, you can find quite a bit. But yeah, it's hard, really, really hard. And they've done that purposely. They don't want people to know like how much is going to all these services and all these programs.
Yeah, somebody was telling me we have BC Hydro here for our power generation, and
Yeah,
the guy was saying that they like the company wasn't really profitable. I guess it's a crown corporation, and rather than taking the political heat, they started taking services that were supposed to like they'll take your money, but they're not providing the services anymore. And now you have to provide for some of those. I'm just going to make this up, but like transportation of the electricity, over the electric lines. Now that's you have to pay for that extra outside of what they normally charge.
yeah, no, I'm sure. I haven't looked too far into that, but I have. My wife's parents always give me the update on what their BC Hydro bill is changing, and it blows my mind. Blows my mind what you guys pay. I don't even know how there's not like a revolution with that kind of stuff because it's crazy. They pay at least 4 times what we pay for electricity and gas. It's unbelievable. Couldn't imagine
Man,
it.
I go out around this. My parents, they live in a really affluent neighborhood. West Vancouver might be the richest neighborhood in Canada, and like the things that people care about, guys being able to decked out in their like cycling uniform. They're bicycling for in packs of 4. Women in their Lululemon pants. They want to go for a jog. The boomers, they want to walk hand in hand on the seawall, look at the ocean. Like these are the things they care about. If they have to pay 6 times as much for electricity, they have money somewhere.
Yeah, oh no, I know. And reality will hit them in time, um yeah, but it's not there's people who aren't in that group that still have to pay the 6 times. Well, it's not, they still have to pay really, really high fees that aren't in that category. Like my wife's parents, so pretty well off. They're in a nice part of Kelowna, but still, like they're complaining about it. They're putting solar panels on the roof to try to like lessen the cost. And I'm like, that's not going to work out either. But I'm like, I'd like to see those numbers.
You know,
But yeah,
things are bad when solar power is more cost effective.
yeah, I still like to see the numbers. I'm going there in the summer. I'm gonna have a sit down with their bills and numbers. I'm curious if it does, because I've run numbers lots with solar panels and I can't hit it. I can't hit it in Edmonton. We don't have enough sun in the wintertime. It falls apart. Maybe Kelowna, but we have more sun in general than Kelowna does. Even in winter, it's just overcast. So it's not sunny in Kelowna in the winter. So I can't imagine it's going to overall save them money, especially with the cost of the solar panels. I think it's like 20 grand for the solar, like the equipment and installation. So I just don't know. I don't know if you carry that over the term, if you actually do save any, but
Yeah. I'm thinking I should let you go because of your cough anyway, and we already hit an hour. Any final thoughts?
no, I guess I think now we're gonna start to see, if things get put in motion, right? Election's over, the throne speech is coming up, this stuff's coming up. We're gonna start to see which direction things are going. We saw Doug Ford. Like Doug Ford he's got to be one of the most biggest fools in Canada. He's so weird. He'll go from completely attacking to like being your best friend like 2 days later. So he kind of made it, he has a little mea culpa about, I want to be nice with Alberta now, and we should, they've been treated unfair for the last 10 years. Like it's just a complete 180 what he said like 4 or 5 days ago. So I think maybe we might see the Carney and the Liberal government attempt to hold in Alberta here, but we'll see. We're going to see in policy. We're going to see in narrative. I'm watching some of these separatist groups to see if they get more funding, because I think that'll be a tell. Because it's those kind of groups that will get the funding as they prepare for this referendum that's coming up, that they're getting enough signatures for, that they're preparing for. So if they start getting a lot of funding, and you'll see like great ads from them and this kind of stuff, I think that'll be a tell that they've gotten funding from some group. But I think we're in for a very interesting 2025. And as I wrote in February, I think Canada's going to look a little different in 2026.
I'll just say it's a shame that Trump shut down USAID. They could have funneled some money to the APP.
Oh, they'll find a way. They'll use something else. I think they'll there's lots of vehicles they can turn on. We'll see.
All right,
But it's going to
Govern.
be something like that. That's how they'll do it. It'll be something like that.
We'll see how it goes. And
Yep.
for anybody watching, you can follow Governed on X at Selfgoverened, right?
Self-governed CA.
There
At
you go.
self-governed CA. Yeah.
All right, Governed.
Okay.
Until the next time, you take care of yourself.
Yeah. You too. Thanks, man.
Bye.